Well, in case you didn't know, the feeds have been down since Wednesday morning. It seems the show is taping the double eviction rather than having a live double eviction. So, not a whole lot of feeds to update on. One thing I did want to talk about before the feeds went off, how I just feel like Hannah might be damned if she does, damned if she don't, because if she doesn't win HOH at the double, she's probably the target. And if she does, and she eliminates whoever, even if she eliminates Kai or Xavier, she's probably the next target unless she wins the next power veto. So Hannah has a lot of vetoes or HOHs she truly needs to win. She's gonna have to win out for sure. Azah also not in a great position. The guys are in the best position right now. So yeah, but since not a lot of feeds to update on, I kind of wanted to take this opportunity to give a true, unbiased point of view breakdown that I have seen over this entire game from the final six cookout members. And I want to do this because, I mean, it's already a known fact that the stands can only see things from their favorite player's point of view. And if other players aren't working to help their favorite player, it's the end of the fucking world, and they hate those other players that aren't helping their favorite player. And we have all these podcasters. The podcasts are truly an echo chamber that they all want to have the same ideas as these stands and just have the stands on their side. That seems to be the case. Rob has a podcast leading the charge of the podcasts to just, give absolutely zero objectivity when it comes to this season, or plenty of seasons past, quite frankly. There is zero objectivity left on social media because it's full of stands and it has taken over the podcasts. They are all super emotional. I saw clips on Twitter again of Rob Has a Podcast just being emotional, acting like none of the players should be the winner, basically. If Tiffany doesn't win, then it's a flop winner, which is fucking absurd because Tiffany is the flop, but I've talked about that enough. She's going to be going. I don't have to continue to bring up all of Tiffany's flopping, even though I do enjoy doing that because I'm a troll. And speaking of trolling, look, like I say wild shit on here to get a reaction. I do. I say a lot of facts on here because I know a lot of the fans are in a delusional world and in the echo chamber. But I also just say things sometimes that I know are going to annoy people or piss some people off. I come from the pro wrestling school of getting a reaction out of people. Old school pro wrestling back when there was actually characters and storylines, not pro wrestling of today where it's all about boring matches, but that's neither here nor there. But I like to say things sometimes that I know will get a reaction. Whether it's good or bad, I truly don't care either way. And so, yesterday I made a Tucker Carlson joke and I knew someone was going to be annoyed with it. And there was a couple of people annoyed with it. And it's like, if conservatives are always talking about fucking snowflakes, why are conservatives also all like crying and, have a thin skin? It goes both ways. And I'm sure the more I keep doing videos on this channel, the more jokes I will make about news anchors, whether it's Fox News or fucking MSNBC or CNN. I'm probably going to make another joke. And because like if you're standing a news anchor, don't you see the problem in that? That they're probably not really giving news, they're probably just giving opinions in it and driving a narrative, it's the same as the stands. Always just the same fucking narrative. So I say this from the bottom of my heart. I really do. From the bottom of my heart. If I say something that annoys you or gets through your thin skin, I truly do not care. Now, let me try and do something that I really feel like these podcasters can't do anymore. And to be clear, there are some people on YouTube that talk about Big Brother that have objectivity and can, actually see the truth and aren't driving the same narrative of everybody else. It's mostly Black people that I see talking about Big Brother that are not driving the same fucking narratives. But all these white podcasters and all these white opinion people that talk about Big Brother seem to all have the same opinion. Isn't that odd? So they've been so emotional these past few weeks about players like Xavier looking like he's the players like Xavier just dominating the game at this point, that they can't give any objectivity with their fucking analysis. So I am going to do that. I'm going to put myself in the point of view of all these players. I'm a writer. It's what you got to do when you're writing stories, is put yourself in the shoes of that character. And thus, that is what I am going to do with the final 6 cookout members. And I am going to start with Derek F, Big D. At the start of this game, Derek F was all about Frenchie. Derek F had a final 2 with Frenchie and was planning on staying true to it. Now, Derek F was a big part of the making of the cookout. I know fans want Tiffany to take full credit, and I'm going to take that credit away from her. But we didn't see if anything really started the cookout before the first talk we saw about the cookout, which was Derek F, Tiffany, and Azah. But it was Derek F and Tiffany really driving that conversation. So whose idea it was, I don't know. But in actually putting it together, it was both Derek F and Tiffany talking about the cookout with others, talking about the original plan of finding their the outsider to be their number one. But I think that despite that, Derek F did not have much faith that it was actually going to work. And so when the slaughterhouse and the butchers were actually made, I think Derek F was certainly on board with it. Derek F wanted Frenchie to go far in this game. He had many early talks with Xavier and Kyland about how, I was mostly Xavier. He had many talks with Xavier about how he wants to go to the end with Frenchie. He made many comments in the first couple of weeks about how, well, the cookout's going to last till about final 7, but then Frenchie's coming to the end. So Derek F was definitely originally super fucking attached to Frenchie. And when Frenchie was about to be eliminated and having his spiraling and his downfall, Derek F was a mess. But when Frenchie was out, Derek F had a clear head for a while. Now, Brittany was in that room with Derek F and Azah, emotionally manipulating them at times. But I think with Frenchie out of the picture and Derek F not having a true number one outsider, Derek F became all about the cookout. Now, when he started having problems with Tiffany, and from Derek F's perspective, I think Tiffany rubbed him the wrong way for whatever reason. And so they had problems. And it was Derek F that started those problems with Tiffany and not the other way around. Derek F had many moments like bitching about Tiffany to others within the cookout. And so eventually when Tiffany started to, rile up the jokers when Christian was going home, Derek F was getting very frustrated trying to work with Tiffany because he already didn't like her from very early on. So Derek F and Tiffany have had problems a long time. And Derek F has always wanted Tiffany to be the first one to go from the cookout because Tiffany rubs him the wrong way. There was a point where Azah was going to be the pawn, but Derek F took the fall for her and was the pawn instead for Kyland. And as the numbers dwindled down and it got closer to just being the cookout, Derek F had been complaining about the girls being in the end this whole time. And so once it was just the cookout, of course, Derek F was going to try and pivot to just be the guys. That's always been his plan. Originally, it was Frenchie and Xavier. That's who he wanted to go to the final three with. And then when Frenchie went out early, he started to, develop his crush on Kyland rather than being on Frenchie, and then wanted to be the final three guys. And so that is where we are with Derek F. He has, I mean, we can talk shit about his game all we want. Would Derek F be a flop winner in my opinion? Yes, because he just doesn't do anything that's bright, in my opinion. He feels great that his contribution to the cookout was being a pawn. Okay, whoop-de-doo. But he's brought really nothing else to the table. But I mean, I can't take away the fact that he's on the verge of possibly getting what he wanted from since week 3, which is a final 3 with Kylan and Xavier. Let's move on to Tiffany. At the very start of this game, when the cookout was first being made, Tiffany seemed to be extremely on board with it. Like I talked about with Derek F. It was Derek F. and Tiffany that truly planned out those initial talks within the cookout. They were the two gathering other players to be in the cookout. Now, Tiffany was the first one to have doubts about Hannah being in the cookout because of her age, but later saw what kind of player Hannah was and I think appreciated it. Tiffany saw Frenchie as a problem, but I think wanted to fill it out for a while. That is why when Frenchie asked her to throw that rogue vote, she went with it. But once Frenchie started saying that he knows who threw the rogue vote, but he's not going to say, I think Tiffany had all the doubt in the world to get Frenchie out of that house. And it was that week and the week after where Tiffany started to become annoyed with Azah, seeing Azah as an emotional player. And from this is Tiffany's point of view. I've already said all my shit that I need to say about the situation with Tiffany, but this is Tiffany's point of view. She saw Azah as emotional and maybe too attached to Brittany. And so Tiffany, who likes control, also wants to work with people who she thinks will listen to her all the time. That is why she connected so well with Derek X. Tiffany felt she could help Derek X in this game, and Derek X would need her and rely on her, which happened for the most part. Obviously, she connected with Claire because Claire had no mind of her own. She was a chair, and Tiffany could, sit in it and just basically control Claire's game, which is what Tiffany did. Now, in those early weeks, however, I think Tiffany started to have her doubts about the cookout because I think Tiffany felt like there was people within the cookout, mostly Derek F. and Azah, that she was not getting along with because Derek F. started some shit with her and she was starting some shit with Azah. And so I think Tiffany felt like she was closer to a lot of outsiders in this game rather than members of the cookout. So Tiffany started creating a lot of alliances to try and cover herself, but I also think to give her some possible backup options if she needed them. Now, it's hard for me to kind of put myself in this point of view because I find it illogical, but I'm going to try and talk about it anyway, that when Derek X was HOH and Christian was the target, she wanted to save Christian, which would have totally screwed Derek X. So I don't know how Tiffany really thought she was going to still be able to work with both of them, but that was her plan. She wanted Christian and Derek X to make a deal with each other. It wasn't really happening. So she tried to save Christian. We all know what happened with the Jokers putting a stop to that. So Tiffany was not able to do that. And she had her doubts again about the cookout when Derek X was going home and Tiffany was trying to think about her own game. And for her own game at this point in time, she probably should have tried to really keep Derek X in this game. But unfortunately, she had already burnt bridges with people within the cookout that she needed the numbers for Derek X to stay, like Azah. So she couldn't save Derek X either. Now, before some of that, there was also a point in time when Claire started putting doubts in Tiffany's head about Kyland. And so she got really paranoid about Kyland's closeness to Sarah Beth. And from that point forward, she really didn't get along well with Kyland. Kyland noticed it. So by the time Sarah Beth's out, Tiffany is trying to get close to Kyland again because Sarah Beth is out. But there's already a lack of trust issues there with Kyland because Kyland's a very confusing individual as it is, so it makes sense as to why Tiffany would feel this way about Kyland. But by the time that second HOH comes around and Tiffany's thinking again about her own end game, but was it the right HOH for her to win? In Tiffany's mind, she took a gamble, but also there is the fact that she still wasn't completely trusting Kyland because there are trust issues there. But I think it is more so she wanted Alyssa to go before Claire to keep Claire around to try and maybe take a shot at one of the guys in the cookout, specifically probably Kyland. But unfortunately for Tiffany, she was HOH and decided to take Claire out of the game. She really was in a rock and a hard place at that point in the game because she could go against the Alliance, but she was going to be immediately targeted. But she, as we see after the double, she was immediately targeted anyway. I still feel like it was too late at that point for Tiffany to turn on the Alliance and make it 2 versus 5. It needed to happen at Derek X's vote off if Tiffany was ever going to flip against the cookout. But she saw the bigger picture and the Black Alliance making it to the end. And any way you slice it, from Tiffany's point of view, I feel like she tried at times to play her own game, but she was handcuffed to the Alliance. That's always what happens with big alliances. So, yeah, I mean, I feel like her social game is what kept her from possibly even being able to keep Christian or keep Derek X in the first place. But regardless of that, she stuck with the bigger picture of the cookout making the end for historical purposes. But now she's probably fucked. We'll move on to Azah's point of view. Now, looking at this from Azah's point of view, she was also one of the first members of the cookout as well. She was in the original talks with Tiffany and Xavier to get the cookout to be a thing. Now, from Azah's point of view, in that first week, Kyland was having a freak out when he was on the block, and Azah was the one who tried to get Kyland's head right. That was the start of Azah's social game that I've talked about immensely. She connected with Derek X because she was the only person when Derek X was being shunned from everybody because of Frenchie's lies. It was Azah. This is before Derek X won the veto. After Derek X won the veto, Tiffany also got close to Derek X. But before all that, it was only Azah who really tried to connect with Derek X, comfort him, and since then, they always connected on a personal level. Now, when Frenchie started going out the rails, Frenchie's Funhouse, as Azah coined it, Azah had to talk to Frenchie every night in that room and slowly started to lose her mind for a while as well. And after Frenchie was gone, she still had to be emotionally manipulated by Brittany. Now, Azah is an empath, so she really takes in other people's emotions and thoughts sometimes, and that is what affected her early in the game when she started being emotional about Brittany. So there was that heated week when Tiffany was not feeling Azah, and I don't think Azah really understood it for a very long time, up until Tiffany wanted Christian to stay and she started confronting the Jokers about their vote, even though Azah had already done the same thing as Tiffany and acted like she didn't know her vote was going. So at that point in the game is when I think Azah finally started to realize how far apart her and Tiffany had become. And so that is when Azah decided, well, nobody's going to blame her for this mess. And she went to Christian, told him she ain't voting for Christian to stay. And so it left others within the cookout who weren't being upfront as well, kind of scrambling. Now, in the pre-jury, Azah's getting close to Derek X on a personal level, and she's already close to Brittany and Derek F on a personal level, obviously. Her and Brittany had made a final two that at one point that Azah went back on later. Well, she didn't go back on it, but she like never brought it up again, purposefully. And then she was in that supposed girls' alliance with Brittany, Tiffany, and Claire. But obviously, when Tiffany stopped talking to Azah, they stopped meeting. So it was at that point that Azah was also connecting with Xavier and Derek F on a game level. Derek F and Azah making a final two, and Xavier being the one that would occasionally keep Azah in the loop when nobody else in the cookout was really doing that. So by the time jury comes around and Brittany is voted out, Azah's over all her emotional grief and is just ready to play the game. Now, unfortunately for Azah, she can't win shit. So she is really getting annoyed with people like Kyland who are saying they're going to do one thing but doing another. Kyland was supposed to throw a challenge, never did. So Kyland is telling Azah one thing at one point, then telling her different things, trying to gaslight her, but it's not working. So at that point, Azah really doesn't get along with Kyland. Now, there was also a point that I forgot and I skipped over about how Azah didn't think Hannah was in the cookout for a while because she really wasn't. It wasn't until it took a few weeks before other people like Tiffany and Xavier trying to actually bring Hannah in on things. So by the time that happened, Azah already felt some kind of way about Hannah because Hannah was talking a lot in the early days of this game. There was some info that would get around to certain people. And at one point, Azah had found out about that. And I don't think Azah since then has really trusted Hannah with any real information. And so I say all this because from Azah's perspective, it has always been Derek F and Xavier that have kept her in the game loop the most, which is now why we're in the final six. And Azah feels most connected with Derek F and Xavier because from Azah's perspective, those two have at least tried to keep her in the loop. Derek F went up as a pawn in Azah's place when Kyland was HOH for the second time. And Xavier was the one that always tried to keep Azah in the loop. Despite all this, though, Azah had still tried to be close to Tiffany up until even this week, wanted Tiffany to stay, but Azah doesn't have any power to keep Tiffany in this game. Now, this next person is going to be super hard for me to, try and see things from their point of view because it's Kyland, and Kyland is a chaotic mess at times. And frankly, there are times when I have no idea what Kyland was thinking, but I'm going to try. So at the beginning of this game, Kyland was already in Kyland snake form because Kyland was the first person to throw Derek X under the bus to Frenchie to try and save his own ass when that's really what fucked up Derek X that first week and almost made him the target. But Derek X won the veto and used it on Kyland. Now, before Derek X and Travis became so close, on night one, it was Kyland and Derek X that were very close, which is why it was surprising that Kyland threw Derek X under the bus at first anyway, but not surprising why Derek X used the veto on Kyland. Kyland was a mess when he was first on the block, but once she came off, I think he slowly started to get his head in the game. He won the next HOH, took Frenchie out as the easy target. Now, Kyland was added to the cookout in week one as well, but he was probably, I would say, at the bottom at first because the slaughterhouse was going on and the butchers was going on. But Kyland really was brought in at the last minute of that And I don't think Frenchie ever actually wanted any sort of alliance with Kyland, because if Kyland was staying on the block with Alyssa, Frenchie wanted Kyland out. Now, Azah was the one that, calmed Kyland down in week 1. So why they had problems after that, I still don't understand, but it's Kyland, so who knows? Kyland got close to Tiffany in week 2 when he was HOH, but I think he always felt there was something about Tiffany that he felt he couldn't take Tiffany to the end of this game. Tiffany and Kyland made a final 2 with each other, but eventually their paranoia of each other made them feel some type of way about the other. So by the time we get to the merge, bring on Survivor. So by the time we get to jury, Kyland and Sarah Beth had been close since the beginning as well. And Kyland told her everything except for the cookout, while Sarah Beth was telling him everything. So from Kyland's perspective, he always had Sarah Beth like this. He always had his hooks, or should I say his little snake fangs, into Sarah Beth. But when Kyland won that second HOH and didn't want to throw it, I think he was feeling very paranoid because he had heard his name from the likes of Alyssa and others. So he knew his name was going around. He knew him and Sarah Beth were possible targets and that he might be on the block next to Sarah Beth. And I think he didn't want that to happen. So he won that HOH, even though he agreed that it should be thrown to someone like Azah or Tiffany. He won it anyways. And he was able to, get Sarah Beth to get out Derek X, despite Derek X being that day 1 guy that saved him eventually with the veto. But the next week, too bad, so sad, he had to go on the block next to Sarah Beth. Sarah Beth was the target and got the boot. I do think Kyland wanted to win that next HOH when Tiffany won it and Kyland wasn't throwing it, because that has been Kyland's MO. We saw it the first time. He was supposed to throw it. He didn't. So we saw it again when he was supposed to throw the spinning competition and he wasn't doing it. So Tiffany had to beat him. And so while we're at the final 6 now, this is why I have a hard time understanding what Kyland really plans, because I get that he's felt some type of way about not fully trusting Tiffany and vice versa, frankly. So I kind of get why he would target Tiffany. But I still don't understand why he wants to go to the end with Xavier. In the early weeks, Kyland and Xavier started to, talk and plan a final 2, possible final 3 with Derek F. So, I mean, I think it's just really, I can't put my point of view into Kyland's ego, but I do think that is what it comes down to with Xavier. Kyland feels he's done a lot in this game because he has done a lot in this game. Kyland has taken a lot of the blood on his hands, but he's pissed off a lot of people while doing it. So I just think he feels like he has a resume to beat Xavier in the end, and that's why he wants to go to the end with Xavier. So let's move on to Xavier. At the start of this game, Xavier was another one who I think was going to ride with the Slaughterhouse if he had to. If the Slaughterhouse was the real big alliance of the house and he couldn't save the cookout, Xavier was going to ride with the Slaughterhouse, but it quickly fell apart. And for whatever reason, Xavier got really, really close to his King's team, specifically Christian and Alyssa. It's weird because Xavier had a crush on Alyssa really bad in that first week. I have documented his simping on this channel. So it's weird that he wanted to get so close to that couple and be the third wheel, but whatever. I guess he saw that as a bigger target in front of him if those two were the showmans in front of him. But winning that third HOH really catapulted Xavier's game. I feel like that is when a lot of the house put their trust in Xavier, because Xavier has a great social game. He has been able to talk to people and make them feel comfortable, make them feel close to him. One of the things that helped him and Azah become close is that he refused to put up Azah as a pawn when she was trying to go up as a pawn, being emotional, instead of letting Brittany go up again. But Xavier put up Brittany instead of Azah, and from there, Azah and Xavier really started to be close on both, well, mostly game level. I mean, Azah might have had a crush and wanted to be more, but from Xavier's point of view, they were closer on a game level, at least to the point where he felt like she would work with him, because eventually Derek F, Xavier, and Azah did make a final three in pre-jury. Now, there also came a point in time when Xavier was starting to have doubts about the cookout. That was also the week when Christian was going home. There was that day when Xavier and Tiffany talked, and they felt like, maybe going with the royal flush was the way to go, because they just had a lot of strong competitors. Now, at that point, I truly don't know what Xavier was thinking. I guess he just had a bad day of spiraling, because that would have been dumb if he would have tried to keep the royal flush. That would have severely killed Xavier's odds, the great odds he had with the cookout. But after Christian left, I think people started to respect Xavier more. Well, I think they respected Xavier because, at least within the cookout, because he was the second person. Derek F was the first person to get out Frenchie, but Xavier was the first person to get out one of his numbers, even though he had another one in Alyssa. So I don't really know if he deserved the respect, but that he got the respect. And from that moment, I feel like he was just able to be the glue that always held the cookout together, because he would get Tiffany and Azah talking to each other. He would try and calm down Azah, calm down Tiffany, calm down Derek F, calm down Kyland. Hannah really never needed any calm, but Xavier was able to calm down the rest of the cookout. And I think this is why he's had such a good endgame. He has always been able to carry this kind of relationship within the cookout where they all respect him. And so, being in that position, he's been able to throw the competitions he needs to throw and get to the end with the cookout and be in the best position, because he did take the time to develop game relationships with players like Derek F and Azah, also with Kyland, also with Hannah, and even with Tiffany at one point. So he has been able to develop the right relationships with the alliance that got to the end, which is why Xavier is the front runner, and why, he would not be a flop winner, like I talked about yesterday, and like these idiots on the podcast say, because his social game has been fucking spectacular, and you can't deny it. This is a social game, I keep saying. This is a fucking social game. And Xavier's social game was great because he played it right. You could call his position easier than others because he's like the alpha male in the big alliance, but nonetheless, he still took the time to develop the right relationships and get himself put in that top spot within the alliance. So it's not like it happened from the beginning, but it slowly developed over the first 6 weeks of this game that he put himself in the best position possible in the house. And lastly is Hannah. Hannah's first couple of weeks in the game were hard. I just feel like she was floating around, not really finding her place in the house. She was the youngest. She wasn't even involved in the cookout at first because of her age. And so, plus she was having to deal with Brent, who was like a stalker and really hindering her game. So that didn't help her either. So it definitely took Hannah quite a few weeks to find her place in this game. But once she got close to Tiffany and finally found out about the cookout, her game fully started to come to fruition. She understood it very clearly. She realized, well, she had a bit of an ego, but I think she realized that the cookout saved her that week when she was on the block because she had numbers on her side. Hannah may have always had a crush on Derek X, but she is a cutthroat player and always understood that she needed to cut Derek X when the time came. And she was playing a rat game at times, telling players in the cookout different things, telling the players in the cookout what the outsiders would say. She never really fully told outsiders stuff that was happening within the cookout. But Hannah played a rat game within the cookout for a while. So, but at the same time, she also was developing good relationships in the cookout. Obviously, her and Tiffany were close. Her and Xavier have always been pretty close. Her and Kyland, I feel like they were close at times. They have an odd relationship. I don't know. It's Kyland. That's just always what I say. It's Kyland. What can I say? And then Derek F, not really. Azah, she tried. Hannah did try with Azah, and Azah was the one that never really connected with Hannah. That falls on Azah. So I always felt like Hannah had a good read on what she needed to do to, develop her game and further her game. And she was always going to let Derek X go when the time came. So, like, honestly, out of everybody, Hannah was the most loyal to the cookout because Azah and Derek F had their doubts early on because Azah was close to Brittany and Derek F was close to Frenchie. And then Tiffany has had many instances where she was trying to go against the cookout and keep people that did not need to be kept for the cookout's sake anyway. And then there was Kyland, who honestly, Kyland was pretty fucking loyal to the cookout, if we're being real, because he's been sketchy about wanting power for sure. He didn't want to throw competitions because he wanted to be safe and in power, but he did everything he needed to do to keep the cookout in the game and further his own game. And I feel like Hannah is the other one that did that. I mean, obviously Xavier too, but Xavier did have that week of doubt when Christian was going home. So Hannah and Kylan have probably been the most like loyal to the cookout. Now, once Derek X was gone and Hannah was closest to, like, she felt close to Xavier because she would, but Hannah was also just really closest to Tiffany and Claire on like a personal and game level, even though Claire, I don't really think ever really trusted or liked Hannah, if we're being quite real. Claire was a weird one, pointless, said it enough times, blah, blah, blah. She was blah. She was blah. But so Hannah, that week, last week, she kind of just got caught up in Tiffany's drama because were already people that had their doubts about Hannah and how she was playing the game, like Azah, who felt like Hannah talks too much, which she does. She does have played that rat game and talks a little too much. So she just also got caught in Tiffany's drama and Tiffany winning the HOH to try and keep Claire, and then Tiffany having to put her own number one on the block. So yeah, I just feel like at that point when Tiffany was caught up in drama within the cookout, Hannah was seen as the closest person to Tiffany, and now Hannah has a hell of a time getting out of that bad spot. So from Hannah's point of view, I felt like she played it as best as she could. And she really tried to put herself in the best positions within the cookout. But unfortunately, Xavier just did it better because Xavier connected with everybody in the cookout, whereas Hannah really just connected with Tiffany and Xavier and then kind of Kyland. So yeah, that is really where I see it now. I mean, Hannah's always had a good grasp on the game and what she needs to do. She knows if she goes to the end with Azah, she could win. But getting there is going to be a hell of a battle. Now, that was probably my longest solo video of the season, and there was even no feeds. But I just wanted to get that off my chest because I felt like nobody else has really been talking about the game from everybody's point of view. I have tried my best all season to really see the game from everybody's point of view and just call it like I see it. And that is how I've seen it. I think everybody had their own perspective on the game. It just worked out better for others. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. It was a long one.